Whoa, that was heavy.
Great Scott! Marty, Jennifer, we're in 1980.
1980. We're back in 1980. Imagine it, guys. Growing Pains, popular TV show. Ronald Reagan is president. Family Ties is also on the air. New Coke was just introduced. And Time named the computer Man of the Year. So we're here in 1980. But what we want to do is talk about what the retirement environment looked like. So 1980 was the peak of pensions. 35 million private sector workers were covered by pensions, some 50 to 60% of the workforce.
Some people would say that was the golden age of retirement, where the pensions really dominated people's retirement income. The employer would contribute to the pensions the whole time. The employees wouldn't have to contribute. In fact, had very little retirement savings. They might have some CDs, especially in the 80s when interest rates were really high and the CDs were paying nice. And they have Social Security. So a large portion of, or actually of most people's retirement income was coming from these employer-funded pensions and then also their Social Security income.
1980, I'm going to say a word, and when we go to the future, it's going to come up again. I just want to tell you guys this, and the word is inflation. But if you lived in 1980, you remember this one because inflation was an all-time peak, 14.6% in March from the previous year before. Inflation went up. Gas prices went up 69% in early 1980, partially due to the oil embargo. A lot of people remember that. Marty?
Talk to anybody around from that time frame who was responsible for the expenses or the head of that household. Who doesn't remember going to the gas station? It was painful. Going to the grocery stores, it was painful. You're used to spending a certain amount to cover that lifestyle that you're living, and now it becomes a little bit less in your control. Somebody else is influencing what your lifestyle looks like and driving what your total expenses are from a month-to-month standpoint.
Speaking of driving, just think if we really did have a DeLorean, back in 1980, and there was one, you shouldn't really mess with the future, but if there's one little thing we could do, we might slow down inflation just a little bit.
Jennifer, plutonium might be available in every street corner today, but in 1980, it was not anywhere to be found.
Someone's been watching the movie.
He's doing a great job.
Okay, 1980, let's set the scene. Feds. The feds are going to come back up again. I just want you guys to know that when we get back in the DeLorean. Also, the feds increase rates. So there's all this inflation happening. So what they do, they increase rates. Well, that did some stuff. Maybe it was good, some stuff that was bad. One of the good things it did is started this bull market, this 1982 bull market run.
And that's one of the things that people today are worried about, because interest rates are increasing very much like we felt in 1980. And a lot of people are thinking, well, interest rates are increasing at a really steadily pace. The stock market's not going to like it. But all we have to do is jump in our time machine, jump back into 1980 and see from 1982 all the way up to 1999, the S&P 500 was only down 1 year. If we're using the index that included dividends, it was only down 1 year. Without the dividends, it was only down 2 years through that time frame. So interest rates, the Fed funds rate increased dramatically in 1981. And then 1982, it came down a little bit, or actually pretty significantly, and then 1983, it shot up. So it was a roller coaster of interest rates, increases and decreases through those early 80s, but the stock market was steady. And from 1982 all the way to 1999, it was on a tear, and people were making a lot of money in the market.
A couple more notable things from 1980, CD rates. At the peak in 1981, 18.4% APY for a 3-month CD. Again, when we go to 2022, we're going to be really shocked that was ever a thing.
Be careful. You cannot give away too much about the future. Not any one woman or man should know too much about their destiny.
Doc, it's a smart man.
The time machine can be valuable and powerful.
Yeah.
But we do not want to alter people's future.
No, we don't want to alter people's future, but it is good to look back. So one more thing about 1980 I want to talk about that's going to come up again is mortgage rates. They reached the highest rate in modern history in 1981. Do you guys remember what it is? I know the families and individuals we worked with have talked about this because they remember it.
14?
16, my research found 16.63%.
That's an interesting note. When we teach the Journey to Retirement workshop, we will ask people in the room. When we teach it in person, we'll ask people in the room. We'll say, and it's kind of fun because we'll position the question, do you remember what your first, when you bought your first house, what the mortgage rate was? And people will raise their hand, they'll say 12. And then somebody will say 14.
Sure.
And it's almost a competition of who paid the highest interest rate on their first mortgage, but it's also a good walk down memory lane of how much people were really paying for their debt in the early 80s.
And they say it with some pride almost.
Yeah, almost.
Knowing that the environment is nowhere near that, which obviously we feel really good about, but at the same time, they went through those struggles and they really value where what the environment is today.
Yeah, so if people today are paying 5 to 6% on their mortgage, and that feels really heavy, it feels like a lot because it is, comparatively speaking. It's been a long time since people have had to pay 4 to 5%, let alone 6.
Yeah, and just to summarize 1980, because we're not staying here, we've got some more time travel to do. What was it like to retire in 1980? And we'll get to the differences, but kind of set the scene for me, guys. What was it like then?
I kind of feel like if you think about it, it felt a little more standardized. That pension is kind of given to you. You aren't saving your own money, so the employer's taking over some of that control. You've got consumer debt that's extremely high, so you're having to deal with these really high rates and make sure that is a part of your plan. We've got safe money, right? The CD rate, so that's the trade-off of consumer debt being high, but now you can get really safe money and you can go get double-digit returns with your investment. So maybe some of the decisions were taken care of for you with the pension and not having to save your own money. And maybe it just felt, possibly a lot of people might feel like it just felt a little easier then.
I think standardized is probably a pretty good description. I remember my grandpa retired in the mid-80s. He had a heart attack at 55. And he worked for a major automotive company in Detroit, Michigan. And they said he could retire early. So they gave him an early retirement at 55. Under today's retirement rules, most people wouldn't be able to do that. But back then, they were dependent upon my grandpa and grandma's Social Security payments and then his pension. They weren't forced to save all of this money in an employer-sponsored plan. So the retirement was very much dependent upon the employer and then Social Security and very little on the individual. And that's really what made it more standardized. So people were working until they were vested with their pension and they could maximize their Social Security income or got it up to a level that was adequate for their lifestyle. But then something disrupts it, they were able to retire because it was the employer and the government and not necessarily their own savings.
Thank you for watching this clip of Retiring Today, and don't forget to subscribe. If you have questions about your retirement plan, take advantage of the complimentary 15-minute retirement checkup phone call.